Welcome to Elixir Health Inspired event, and today we're going to be talking about quite an emotional subject called post-traumatic stress disorder. It's something that I really wanted to bring to your guys' attention as it happened to my very, very good friend Tim, who has been my friend for too long, as long as I can remember. So we went to school together, so we're really, really good friends. And knowing Tim and being the relaxed person that he was back in the day, it was a real shock to find out that he was suffering from PTSD. So just to give you a bit of an idea of the problem with PTSD is we've got 2 million people in the UK who are currently affected with PTSD, and only 1 in 4 of those living with PTSD actually go and get treatment. So what we hope to get out of this video today is that if you recognize any of these signs within yourself, is that you go to the places that we point you to and you seek to get that help. And if we just get 1 or 2 of you that can find that in yourselves, then that's going to be a real boost for the video itself. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce you to Tim.
Hello.
Over to you. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, Tim.
As you said, I've known you many years. Good and bad, lots of fun.
Mainly good.
Mainly good. I'm 46 years old and I have something called complex post-traumatic stress disorder. This is caused by multiple traumatic events, can be linked or can be separate. I didn't find this out until November the 14th, 2019.
Wow.
And since that day, it's been a long journey, and it's a journey I'll carry on.
Mm-hmm.
It was
so the trauma was not necessarily from 2019. It happened way before. Is that right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It was 27 years ago was my main traumatic event.
Wow.
Everything that happened after that has either been a trigger for or added to that. Mm-hmm. It took many months of counselling to work out what the actual trauma was. I thought it was other things.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's difficult, and I'm still learning now. Still learning about it. Still having the odd flashback or the odd realisation about why something is affecting me.
So what happened to cause you PTSD then?
I had an accident on a farm. I rolled a piece of farm machinery down an embankment. Cold, snowy day, a bit like today really in Yorkshire where I live. It was a very cold, snowy day, but -10, and I was driving a piece of farm machinery, hit some black ice and slid off down a bank. The machine flipped and it pinned me underneath it. I remember coming to. I don't think I was knocked out, but I remember thinking, oh, I'm alive. That was lucky. That was really lucky. And then I tried to stand up and I couldn't move my legs. My legs were both pinned. I looked behind me and I could see diesel pouring out the fuel tank, and it was hitting the exhaust. And I could smell the smell of diesel and see the smoke. And it was also pouring all over me, and I wanted to get out. I pulled my legs and I couldn't move them. They were stuck, so I pulled them really hard. I think I blacked out. When I came to again, I realised I was in big trouble, so I started shouting and screaming. Nobody came. Without realising, for 27 years, I felt alone, felt trapped and alone, and that's the reason why.
Right. But you only found that out because of counselling, or? Yeah,
it was the counselling that brought it all out. Even in the middle of counselling, I hadn't realised it was that event that had caused it all.
Right.
I'd had counselling that morning, and I was sat watching the television with my wife, and she was watching Chicago Fire, and there was a lady trapped in a car accident by her legs, and there was steam and smoke coming off the engine, and she was screaming, and I had the mother of all flashbacks, and it finally dawned on me, the thing that had troubled me for nearly 3 decades, and it all came out, and I fell apart.
Right.
Sat on the kitchen floor crying. I had to leave the room. I couldn't stay in the lounge because that's where it was on the telly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, back to that day, I have very limited memories because I've been pinned under it so long, losing blood and hypothermia kicking in. I remember being alone for a long time before anybody found me, and then everything happened very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
There were multiple fire engines, ambulances, police, GPs, and they were all stood on the bank
Mm-hmm.
looking down. And I couldn't spin enough to see them. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them, and I could make out like grey shapes above me looking down. I couldn't understand what they were saying. I think because I was so cold and poorly and lost so much blood and frightened.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this image of these grey shadows up there and the voices. And thinking, why won't you help me? Why won't you get me out? And I think that's the other reason why I can feel so alone in a crowded room, surrounded by people, and I can feel alone because of that one event. They're all there looking at me. They're all looking at me down, and I can't move and I can't get out. Now, they did get me out, and knowing what I know now about emergency services, they would have been deciding the safest way of getting me out. No point causing me more harm or hurting themselves.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, the emergency services have to get home safely as well as the casualties.
Yeah.
But these events, they trick your mind, and your mind remembers them in a non-logical way.
Okay, describe that a little bit. What do you mean by a non-logical way?
Had I been in a sound mind, excuse me, had I been in a sound mind, I would have realised that the GPs, paramedics and firefighters, they're trying to find a safe way of rescuing me. If they'd have just come running down and tried to dig me out, and that 10-ton piece of machinery had slid, it would have took all of us out, finished us all off. But one of the main things with PTSD, it was described to me as you're living in that moment and you stay in that moment until you deal with it. So if you imagine a filing cabinet and all your memories, happy and sad and memories, are all stored in a filing cabinet, in a traumatic event, that memory is stuck in the door, so the door can't shut properly. And that is how that memory comes to life, whether it be flashbacks, anxiety. Personally, I think I lived with a state of hypervigilance for 27 years. Always looking for the next accident. It's probably one of the reasons I've made such a good lorry driver over the years, because my awareness of what's around me has been heightened because of the PTSD.
Yeah, very true. And you also took the adventure for working for the RNLI.
I did. And what happened to me that day and some of the other traumatic events were some of the reasons I joined the RNLI. I didn't ever want to feel, I mean, I'll come on to it later on. I saw an accident. I didn't really know how to help. So one of the reasons I joined the RNLI, so I always knew how to help people. And if anybody did need help, they would never feel alone, because I felt alone, and I would make sure. And that was one of the reasons I joined the RNLI, and it's been an amazing time. I've served 13, 14 years now. I've retired from seagoing duties.
Yeah.
And I just help them.
Has it really been that long?
Yeah, it has. I've got the sore knees to prove it. Anyone who's been in a D class inshore lifeboat will back me up there.
There's been a few. Okay, so so you've talked about some of the signs, but is there anything else that's happened in your life as well that has, started to trigger what you now know are symptoms of PTSD?
Yeah, I was working late one night. It was a lorry driving, specialist type of lorry, and I was working in a city centre, and I witnessed a horrific accident. The casualty had catastrophic head, neck and leg injuries, and I had a British Red Cross first aid certificate, and nobody was helping, so I ran up, and her injuries were catastrophic. There was nothing that could be done. Tried everything, but it wasn't enough. And sadly, she died. And for many years, I blamed myself. I thought maybe I should have done something different if I'd have got there quicker. And again, with it being in the middle of the road, there were lots of people there, lots of people watching. And I have this recollection, because I was concentrating so hard on the casualty, had these grey shadows above me looking down, and I can hear the voices, but I can't make out what they're saying. And that links it back to the first trauma with the grey shadows and the voices. Now, through counselling, I understood that not everybody can run into a scene like that and help. Some people wouldn't know what to do. Some people would be fazed by the amount of blood. In my mind, these people were watching and not helping. And again, I was left thinking, why aren't they helping? Why can't they help me? Through counselling, I came to understand that these people maybe wanted to help, didn't know how to help, but didn't feel right walking away, wanted to be there to support me if I needed it. But because of the original trauma, in my mind, for years, I was left with this, why won't they help me? These people, they're always on my left side looking down, and they never help, and I can just hear them talking. And that was part of the illness. That was another trauma that linked back to it.
So it's really interesting. You've learnt to now identify that trauma and start to see those visions effectively that are in your head. But yeah,
and the misunderstanding that caused them.
Yeah, but a lot of people sadly don't get to realise why those things are happening, and you know, it happens in quite a lot. You know, so okay. So, what other signs did you have then around your PTSD?
From word go, from the time of the accident, it was there. I wasn't ready, couldn't and wouldn't stop and think, wouldn't look at it, wouldn't remember it. It was too frightening. Within days, I was having nightmares, night terrors. That was within days.
And what do you mean by night terror?
I would wake up, short of breath, sweating, sometimes screaming. The bottom sheet on the bed I'd get caught in it. I'd rip it off the mattress and get wrapped up in it. And that was within days. So 27 years that was happening. Every time I saw a paramedic or an ambulance or a fire engine on Blues and Twos, I'd get tears in my eyes. But I wouldn't ask myself why. I just couldn't. I mean, later on, 6 years ago, I had a head-on collision with a paramedic on Blues and Twos. She ended up underneath the lorry. Her car it was a write-off. And there was that steam. There was the steam and the smell of hot diesel. So that would have been a massive trigger. And a paramedic on Blues and Twos. I've been injured in the RNLI. I jumped off a pier onto a boarding boat and twisted my ankle. And it was the same ankle that was trapped. And I ended up in the back of an ambulance with my leg again, going to hospital. All these things are triggers. I didn't see it at the time. I didn't realise it. And each one of these things that happen takes another little piece of you, makes it harder to get through the day.
And do you get night terrors about those as well, or does it always go back to the root, which was being trapped under the faultless truck?
I would never remember what's caused the night terrors. And when I was younger, I used to be able to just sort of roll over and go back to sleep. But the older I got, the worse the night terrors got. And I'd have one of these and I wouldn't sleep. That'd be me awake for the rest of the night. I would never remember what it was, but I would have this feeling of being trapped, probably by the bottom sheet. And that's probably because I've grabbed it and pulled myself and got rolled up in it. And the feeling of being trapped is from being underneath the farm machinery.
Mm-hmm. So do you still get any of this now? Bearing in mind you've gone through treatment, so do you still suffer from these things?
I haven't had night terrors for about 3 months now, 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
I think I might probably get one. Might get one tonight. Might never get one again.
Mm-hmm.
If I have one now, I know what it is. Being told I have PTSD has been quite a relief, because when I'm having a bad day, I know what it is. I know what's caused it. I know there is other people out there that have PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't feel alone. I mean, one of the reasons I've been lucky I haven't suffered with PTSD in the RNLI is because we've always gone to sea as part of a crew, and I've never felt alone. These people, you've trained with them. If you're out and you see something, or you're out in a storm, I've never felt frightened, because there's other people around you
Mm-hmm.
who you know what they're capable of, they know what you're capable of. So in that way, I've been lucky.
Yeah, but it's an important point. So you feel that community around you is something that can really help, not just in terms of PTSD, but obviously helps in everyday life.
Yeah, definitely. Whether it be at work or at home or in the emergency services, or, I mean, there's the old saying, isn't there? Problem shared is a problem halved.
Mm-hmm.
And it's right.
Mm-hmm.
If you are suffering with PTSD, you need to talk. You have to talk about it.
Okay.
As I said, 27 years, I didn't know I had it. It was something.
And just to say that as well, you and I are really good friends, and have been for all of that 27 years and some. And we've never talked about this until a couple of years ago, when this came to a head.
If I'm brutally honest, before I was diagnosed, I honestly thought a mental illness, you could get over yourself, you could pull yourself together and it'd be fine. But
Mm-hmm.
you can't. You can't. You need help.
Mm-hmm.
And I
So,
think I was ashamed of suffering with night terrors and not sleeping and anxiety. I was ashamed of it all.
mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't admit it to anyone. And now I'm on YouTube telling everybody.
Exactly, it's quite a turnaround. So, what other signs were there? I mean, we've talked about anxiety. I mean, were there any other things that you thought were, triggering in your mind, or were they the main signs for you?
The main signs were the tears, blues and twos,
Mm-hmm.
Panic attack, which I'll come on to in a minute. Anxiety was a big one, and it got worse and worse, especially in the last, probably since my daughter was born. So in the last 7 years, that was maybe something that brought it all home.
And that's interesting. So the daughter, I assume, made you feel vulnerable? Well, I don't know.
Having seen the worst side of the world, I just wanted to protect her.
Right.
I mean, there was once when she was rushed into hospital with meningitis, and I was working 100 miles away, and I had to drive three hours in a lorry to get to hospital. And I parked up and I ran in. Within half an hour, I had to leave. I was getting a massive panic attack. Started feeling dizzy,
Mm-hmm.
couldn't breathe, was sweating, and I hated myself. The fact that my wife and daughter needed me and I had to leave, couldn't stay in there. I couldn't forgive myself. I really hated myself. Couldn't work out why. And again, with the counselling, my counsellor made me twist that 180 degrees and said, you have PTSD, you've had it for 27 years. With that going on in your mind, you still made it into the hospital for an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon, and an hour in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to think more positively, that even with that going on, I still managed to go to the hospital, even though I was having massive panic attacks and anxiety, still made it in there.
Yeah.
But the counselling is the treatment for me.
Okay, so let's talk about that treatment. We've talked about, you know, some pretty unbelievable things really that have happened to you that, you know, in hindsight, you look back and you think, yeah, of course it was a trauma, you know. And when we think about PTSD, we think about, you know, military folk or people in the services who suffer from it day to day. But actually, it could be real life experiences like you've had, that you just don't. As you said, you think, oh, I'll just get over it. You know, I'll sort myself out. But actually, you can't. You do need help. So, what did you do, Tim?
The last accident I had was when it really all started. It was a couple of weeks before we met up in Manchester, and I slipped over on black ice and I knocked myself out, split my head open, possible fractured skull, got rushed to hospital. The funny story is, having knocked myself out, I came round and I was convinced it was Tuesday and I was in Sheffield, but it wasn't. It was Wednesday and I was in Barnsley.
Right.
And they have these grey shapes up there, and I can't understand what they're saying. Now, the funny story is, as I came to more, I realised that they were all wearing grey overalls and they were from Aberdeen. So, having had a bang on the head, it's quite understandable. I couldn't understand these Aberdonians. But again, I had a massive panic attack in the hospital and I checked myself out. Couldn't stay in there.
And were you concussed at this time?
Yes. And I checked myself out. Mm-hmm. I couldn't stay in there. And from that point, within 6 months, I'd had a mental breakdown. It was at work, and climbed in the lorry, and I couldn't breathe. I had to get out. The computer wasn't working, the office wasn't open, and I just sat in my car and I cried for an hour. And I phoned up my wife, and she said, "You need to go to the doctors." So I turned up at my local surgery, 8:30 in the morning. I went to see the receptionist and I said, "I need to see a doctor." And she asked me why. I don't know what stopped her, but she looked in my face and she said, "Can you write it down for me? And I will be forever grateful for that." She saw something that I needed help. And she got me that help. I'll be right in a minute.
All right, take your time.
So I got to see a nurse practitioner, and we were talking, and I was crying, and she passed me tissues, and it was a big thing, crying in front of anybody.
Yeah.
And I was embarrassed. And she said, "Tim, I think you have PTSD." And I said, "I don't." I decided that day, she signed me off work for a week. I decided that day I was quitting my job. It was the third or fourth job I'd quit that year because it was a tough year and I couldn't sell and I was arguing with people and I needed the change because every time it was new or I changed a job, the horrors, the pain, everything I was running from disappeared for a bit. So I did what I normally did. I quit my job and I got a new job where I wasn't driving. I was working in a warehouse and I felt safe because I wasn't sleeping. The day I'd had a breakdown, I hadn't slept for 3 days. And got a job in a warehouse and it was all good. It was new. I wasn't stressed. I wasn't driving. Within 2 weeks, it all started again. So the number the nurse practitioner had given me was for a service called the Emotional Wellbeing Service. And Amanda phoned up because I was too frightened and she made me an appointment. And that was early December. And as a lot of us blokes do, it was an hour and a half assessment over the telephone. I tried to blag my way through it, tried to laugh, tried to tell jokes. And then she asked me 3 questions. One was, was I in danger of hurting or killing myself, which hit me like a stone. The second one, would I hurt my wife or kill my wife? And I was falling apart by then. And then the showstopper was, did I feel I was a danger to my 6-year-old daughter? And I fell apart. I realised then I was very poorly and I wasn't going to get over that, and I needed help. And she did the right thing. She realised the state I was in. In lifeboat terms, she came along in a big orange boat and she leant over the side and she held her hand out, and I took it. Because if I hadn't have took it, I'd have gone down and I wouldn't have come back up. And she said to me, Tim, you have PTSD. I can help you. Let me help you. And I'd broken down, I'd cried in front on the telephone to her, and I didn't feel shame or embarrassment anymore. And I said, okay, help me. And she did.
And I think you'd gain that trust as well from her by that point, which really helped you through this.
She didn't laugh. She didn't laugh. She didn't dismiss it. She said, you're poorly, you need help. And that's how my journey into counselling started. And it was an amazing journey. It was a hard journey. You have to engage with it. You have to bond. If you meet your counsellor and there isn't a bond, counselling's not going to work. You need
Talk to me about counselling, because we've got this concept in our heads that it's tea and biscuits and sit on the couch, Mr. Beckett.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Yeah. My counsellor used to think that was very funny.
Yeah.
It's a very raw experience. It's a very therapeutic experience, and you can walk out of there feeling 10 tons lighter with your shoulders up. And for it to work, first and foremost, you have to be honest with yourself. There was part of me that wanted to turn up for counselling once a week and expect the counsellor to make you better. It doesn't work like that. You have to engage with it. You have to do a lot of self-contemplation in your spare time. Think about the things. The counsellors can guide you and they walk alongside you. They can't tell you what you need to do. They can guide you. And if they think something's wrong that you're saying, like a couple of the things, the counsellors changed my mind and got me to see things in a different way.
And that was purely through just having a conversation and them understanding you and where you come from.
Yeah, because there is a time when you have counselling where your counsellor knows more about you than any other person on the planet. So that you build up that trust level, they get to know you. And if something doesn't sound right, they're not frightened to say that doesn't sound right.
And do you think you could have got that from just anybody? Or does it have to be a professional person to help you through that?
I think everybody's different. For me, with the specific traumas and the things that I saw, I wouldn't have wanted to be graphic with friends or family.
Right.
Because some of the things were truly awful. Awful. And looking back on them, I wouldn't expect friends or family to listen to that. The graphic, because the graphic nature of it all had to come out. Part of the healing process. I had to bring it out of that filing cabinet, look at it all, look at the whole scene, look around you in the scene you're stuck in, deal with it, understand it, and put it back in the filing cabinet and shut the drawer. It's a memory now. I can open that drawer, and I can take it out and I can look at it. And I can put it back in the drawer and I can shut the drawer. But it's a hard process to live in that scene again, deal with it, understand it, put it to bed. When that casualty died, as I said, I was left for years feeling I'd let her down. But through counselling, my counsellor may help me understand that She was going to die whatever I did. She didn't die alone. I was there and I was talking to her, did what I could, and I spoke to her.
And you were.
And she died, but she didn't die alone. And I get some comfort from that now. Looking at it a different way, get comfort. So the things that were bad memories are actually now comfort for me. I'm looking at it a different way, from understanding it a different way.
So we've talked about the signs of PTSD. We've talked about the treatment that you had. What does the future look like for you now, and what do you hope for?
The future's looking good. At the start, I was finishing my counselling at the start of coronavirus, and I was furloughed for 4 weeks. And it was an amazing 4 weeks. A time when I needed to be with my family every day, to see them, have fun with them. I was. I've decided I'd like to become a counsellor. Whether this takes me 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I'm not worried anymore. I will get there eventually. And I think when you've been to a dark place, you can understand other people. I'm a lot calmer. I'm a lot happier. I sleep better. And I think I'm a nicer person. For years, I've helped people at arm's length, because when you need them, they're not there, or they're watching you. So the future's looking good. I'm going to become a counsellor. I've started my journey. I'm doing an online course, and if it takes me 5 years or it takes me 10 years, I'm not worried. I'm not worried. I'm a happier, calmer person, more like the person I used to be. I mean, we all change the older we get, but I'm happier and calmer. I'm enjoying life. I'm planning for the future, but I'm also living in the now, which is something I haven't done for a long time. The years I've held people at arm's length because I was frightened of people getting too close, frightened of people finding out the stuff that I didn't know myself, that I was running from, and feeling a lot that I was alone. Now I'm realising all this was wrong. So I'm enjoying life again. I'm going out and I'm meeting people, I'm having fun, we're socialising. Because at my worst, all I could do is get up and go to work. I couldn't go out. I wouldn't go out on a Saturday or a Sunday. Just couldn't cope with it. So I'm enjoying life. I'm enjoying going out. I'm enjoying meeting people and doing stuff. So the future is looking good.
Fantastic. And I can say that, you know, since 2019, when I remember your breakdown happening and how you were at that point and how you completely withdrew yourself to how you are now, is something you should be really proud of, and something that, you know, your counsellor has helped you get to this point. And, you know, without that help, and we need help with this, it's not something that, you know, you can just deal with. You can't. You need help. But if you have that help, and it is Mr. Miraculous to see you like this now. And I know that over the last year or so, well, the last few months or so, we've been in contact more than we have probably in the last few years because of this issue. So, and it is great. So, on that note, what are your top tips, Tim?
For me, and I hope this helps other people, and I think it's important for all mental illnesses. If you have a troubled mind, you're not going to sleep. And if you can't sleep, you're going to have a troubled mind. So for me, sleep is the key. Now, I didn't sleep well for years. And these days, I use deep sleep meditation music to help settle me down. A hot bath, I relax in a hot bath. I use lavender spray.
Is this part of a bedroom routine, Tim?
It is. It's part of a routine now. Hot bath, spray a bit of lavender spray on my bed, deep sleep music, and I normally use like a 10-hour app, and quite often it's still going in the morning when my alarm goes off to wake me up for work, which for me is amazing.
Yeah.
And like the lavender spray, it helps promote a calm environment, calm, quiet environment, and relaxing. And also, if something's troubled you during the day, talk about it. If something's bugging you, if you haven't paid a bill or something needs fixing, get up, do it. Don't sit there or lie there worrying about it. Sort it straight away. I think when you have something like PTSD, one little anxiety can turn into a nightmare, a terror, or a flashback. So that for me, the key is calmness, dealing with things, and good sleep.
Excellent. Cracking advice. It's been really good to talk to you like this and to see you being able to be so open about it when you've gone through a trauma, quite literally. And hopefully this video goes out and you guys can either recognize this in yourself or maybe you recognize it in a loved one, and you're able to offer that help. We will post at the bottom of the YouTube video and also in Facebook a list of contacts that you can make, who you can reach out to try and get that help. But please make sure you do. So thank you, Tim. It's been fantastic talking to you.
Pleasure.
And best of luck in the future, mate.
Look after yourselves.
And you.